Hey there, Soulmates. Thank you for joining us. We do have to begin with breaking news this morning. This evening, a jury has found former police officer Kim Potter guilty on all charges, first-degree manslaughter and second-degree manslaughter for shooting and killing Daunte Wright. Wright was killed in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota during a traffic stop turned arrest back on April 11th, 2021. Jurors deliberated for about 27 hours over the course of 4 days. 49-year-old Potter has pleaded not guilty to the charges and has called the shooting a mistake, testifying that she mistook her her gun for her taser. The maximum penalty for first-degree manslaughter, according to CNN, here in this case, predicated on reckless use, handling of a firearm, is 15 years in prison and/or a $30,000 fine. Since Potter, they're reporting, has no criminal history, Minnesota sentencing guidelines recommend a sentence roughly between 6 and 8.5 years in prison.
So we say, did they get it right? Because when I heard they were going to have a decision today, I was somewhat concerned thinking about home for the holidays decision, because is it true the jurors, if they have not made a decision, they had to check with the judge if they could go home for the weekend for Christmas. So I wanted to make sure this wasn't a rushed decision. I think a lot of people are satisfied and happy with what the results are. Not sure when it comes to the amount of years that she may be doing, though.
Brooke, you've said it before, honestly, 6 to 8 years in prison, although to some people, we're looking for more years. To some people, 20, 30, X amount of, similar to Derek Chauvin's case, we're looking for more years, but 6 to 8 years, even if she gets that, is still going to be a life-changing time in her life as well. And so, I don't know what was right or what was wrong, as long as justice was served. And really all I care about is how the family feels. How do Daunte Wright's family feel? How are they feeling right now? Do they feel like this brings a closure to this situation right now for them? Of course, they won't get their loved one back, but that's kind of what I want to know from them. Do they feel like this was enough? Because honestly, how I feel really doesn't matter.
It's always something that is the biggest topic of conversation, and kind of what we talk about when we talk about these stories is that there's so much looking to the trial, right? So much looking to the testimony. Is the defendant going to testify? What is the jury going to decide? How much time are they going to get? And kind of when you get to this point where a decision has been made, it comes back to the fact that once this is all said and done, a family, a little baby boy has lost his father.
Yes.
Right? A mother has lost her son. A girlfriend has lost her partner. And that's what's at the heart of this, and it's a tragedy.
And I'll say this real quick in closing, like, you have to think about the mom who was on the phone with Daunte Wright saying, because he was scared when he called her when he got pulled over, you're going to be okay. Only to FaceTime and for the passenger in the car to show her son, hunched over because he'd been shot. And we know what happened after that. So, unfortunate.
All right, let's move on to our top story today. Attorney General Merrick Garland made a massive decision ordering the Bureau of Prisons to allow incarcerated federal inmates that have been released because of the COVID-19 pandemic. He's allowing them to remain at home. So NBC News is reporting, the CARES Act, the federal government's response to the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. It allowed the release last year of some incarcerated people based on their age, health, and length of remaining sentence. William Barr, who was then the Attorney General, he acted to allow the release after 5 inmates died of COVID-related illnesses in Louisiana and Ohio. This new directive reverses the plan that was William Barr's proposed plan that would have required many of those people who have been released and serving time this past year at home to return to their prison cells. Here's a quote here. Thousands of people on home confinement have reconnected with their families. They found gainful employment and have followed the rules. That is what Attorney General Merrick Garland is saying. Essentially, this has been the argument for many activists that if it is safe enough to have people on home confinement because of COVID-19, then these are people who should not continue to be incarcerated because they are not a danger to the community, that they should continue to be able to serve their time on home confinement because prison is not necessary in these cases. And it's an interesting thing. It appears Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, it appears he agrees with that. Also, prison is expensive.
Yes.
And so the argument of many people who say less taxes, they have long said, listen, some people.
Exactly.
But, because obviously, sometimes those arguments don't actually line up. But some people who have said, this isn't even good, spending this much money on people who shouldn't have to be there, who there's no real need for them to be there other than the fact that they've been given a sentence and they have to serve out this time. And so, you know, he makes some really strong points there, saying they've been able to find gainful employment. Yeah. They've been able to reconnect with family, because when we talk about people who are incarcerated, a big deal, an important aspect when it comes to you know, making sure that they don't end up back there is community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And we do know this: when the pandemic hit, a lot of loved ones were concerned about their loved ones within the prison walls, because they're saying, look, you just leave them there to die, because how are we going to control COVID-19? How are they going to remain safe? They're in an enclosed environment. How can they avoid not getting it? So it was a huge problem going throughout that. And when this program happened, I thought it was great. Like you said, many people flourished from this situation. It shows that going back into society, they can survive, they can grow and do better. And like you said, and be with their families, which is kind of priceless.
I have several points that I feel about this. So there are some people that I feel like the only reason why this is happening is to just go against anything that Trump did, because you mentioned that in the story that this goes against what Trump was doing. And so I don't want any of our soulmates out there that might feel that way. I don't think we should focus on that. I think we should focus more on, first thing being, I think that it's great for the prisoners that are out on their own. Brooke, great point that we focus a lot. We always talk a lot about here on Foxhole's Black Report. What do people do when they're let back into the world? What opportunities can they have? Will they be able to get jobs? What is their life going to be like with their family? And this is a good example of what can happen for the people that are out on their own right now, doing the right thing and following the rules, because there are some, I'm sure, that, you know, might not follow the rules, but for the ones that are following the rules, I think that this is great for those people. Also, there's been a big push about closing federal prisons. That's a big conversation about closing federal prisons. And then people ask, okay, if we close federal prisons, where are those people going to go? This is another answer of, if we, you know, to get people out of jail. Here's a great example that there are people that can be out on their own and do the right thing. My last thing is that we're seeing another surge in the Omicron variant of COVID-19 right now. So do we want people to be at home and then possibly bring COVID-19 back into the jails? We always talk about this, how the conditions are in jail and COVID-19. What do we want those people out on their own and then they bring COVID-19 potentially, you know, going it back and forth into the jail? So I think this is great. And then I have one more point. I'm sorry, I have one more point here. This is my last point. Is that it made me think that if it was this easy to let people out on their own, were those people, did they need to be in jail in the first place? Because if it's this easy to let them go, why were they there in the first place? That's what I thought as well. So I had a lot of points on that.
All right.
On to the next story. On Wednesday, an exclusive interview with ABC World News Tonight, President Joe Biden said yes, he planned on running again in 2024. And if his predecessor, Donald Trump, runs, then it would increase the prospect even more. Biden became the oldest person sworn in as president at age 78 when he took office earlier this year. And questions about whether he would seek a second term have followed him throughout his presidency. With Biden's popularity in decline, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki stated last month that Biden did indeed intend to run again. Last year, before the election, Biden had told ABC he absolutely planned on being president for 8 years if elected. There's been a lot of rumors. One rumor is that will VP Kamala Harris run with him again? Will he want VP Kamala Harris to run with him again? There's been discussions that there might be a Biden-less 2024 with Kamala Harris possibly running on her own if Biden decides not to run. And so I think that we're going to see some new contenders, honestly, in 2024 that we didn't see. I mean, we're kind of talking about 2024 kind of soon, to be honest with you. It's been a year. I feel like there's 3 more years. Biden has a lot more time to prove what he's going to do. So I don't think that I think we're talking about 2024 too soon, because Kamala Harris says that her and Biden haven't even talked about re-election yet. So I think that we should let Joe Biden and Kamala Harris kind of prove themselves a little bit more before we talk about who's going to be there or not. But that could be me.
Well, I agree. They definitely have some work to do. We know that, right? They have some things they need to get done. People are sitting back with their arms folded, wondering, are you going to promise? Are you going to come through with the promise that you've given us? A couple things. President Biden, if he decides to run again, obviously said if he's healthy, he wants to do it. But then again, that should be a conversation behind the walls he has with Kamala Harris. And the reason why, this could be her opportunity. And if they didn't run together, then what would it say about them over the previous 4 years? Was there issues that we didn't know about? So I don't know if that's going to throw up a red flag and people might be concerned about that. But I do know this. If Trump wants to run again, if Trump decides he's going to run again and he goes up against President Biden, Biden's popularity percentage, how America feels about him, it has to get back up, because we know it's low right now, and it has to get back up. And a lot of things on that checklist have to be checked off that he's promised to do.
What's also interesting is that, you know, again, they are not saying, hey, we've talked about this. This is our decision. And that could partially be because maybe they don't want to. It could also, I'm curious how much of that has to do with the criticism that former President Trump got, because very soon after he was elected president, he started his reelection bid. And a lot of his rallies, were campaign rallies, not marked as campaign rallies, but it was a lot of talk very early on about reelection. And there was a lot of frustration from Americans, many Americans who felt like, hey, you're spending sitting presidential money on your campaign. This is being called this, but it feels like this. And I wonder if it's part of them wanting to avoid that.
Yeah, well, there was a press conference where I believe it was the deputy press secretary, it wasn't Jen Psaki, but she was doing an interview, and so they were asking her about re-election, and so she kind of like laughed off jokingly because, like you said, I really don't think that they have an idea right now what they want to do. And I, again, think that we're going to see some new people enter in the mix that we didn't think were going to be there before.
And at the end of the day, we have the midterms coming, and that's going to play a huge factor before we even get to 2024, that's for sure. All right, 2 unrelated COVID-19 infections have made the news as Pittsburgh's mayor-elected Ed Gainey had to move an in-person press conference to Zoom after a rapid test came back positive. Atlanta mayor-elect Andre Dickens is also on a 10-day quarantine after experiencing mild symptoms and getting a positive test on Tuesday, the Root reports. However, after testing again, it appears that Gainey may have had a false positive because he tested negative for the virus on Wednesday, 2 days after the first test. Both mayors have their work cut out for them as Dickens takes over the city from Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and Gainey is the first black mayor-elect in a largely black city. Look, we can go back to the whole situation when LeBron James tested positive, right? And then he had some question marks. I think something like that on Twitter because a couple of days later it came back negative. So sometimes that can happen, all right? Nothing is perfect. But I will say this, a lot of people are getting Omicron. We understand that the numbers are high. I mean, you got to think about that. So what do we do moving forward, even for the holidays? We have some family members that want to go and get the over-the-counter test and can't because they're not there before they have gatherings with their families. So that could be a problem, right? And then we also have it where, like, some families are saying, well, look, we're all vaccinated. You're not. Maybe you shouldn't come over. So, look, from the politicians to everyday people, this is the issue going through the holidays.
You know, I was really happy. Well, first thing is that it kind of sucks that he was supposed to take office January 3rd, and it's like, you know, right in the middle of that, his big moment. But I'm also happy that in his announcement, he stressed 2 things, that he stressed the importance of getting a booster because that is important. He also stressed that he got a rapid test. Again, I have taken rapid tests. I recently got a rapid test, but I'm not a fan of rapid tests. And so he also said, hey, I got a rapid test, but I'm waiting for my PCR test. Going back to what I was saying yesterday, that if you check when you get your rapid test that you were exposed, even if you weren't, they can give you a free PCR test and you can do them both at the same time. I recently did it just to make sure I got that free PCR test to be sure. And so I just think that, you know, if you get a rapid test, make sure you get a PCR test as well because it'll come in a few days just to be sure. Like you said with LeBron James, it sounds sketchy. Like, how could you be positive and then negative at the same time? But when you get the rapid antigen test, that is literally what you're signing up for. So just get you a PCR test just to be doubly sure.
All right, this week the FDA approves the first ever long-acting injectable drug for HIV prevention. As ABC News reports, this is, until this, the only FDA licensed and approved medications for HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis, most commonly known as PrEP. The only medications were daily oral pills. PrEP is taken daily so that it builds up in one's system to the point that if there is an HIV infection, it prevents the virus from replicating and spreading throughout the body. When taken as prescribed, PrEP services reduce the risk of getting HIV from sex by about 99%. Now, that is data from the CDC. Those numbers are in from the CDC. Individuals now who feel at risk of HIV infection have the option of taking the daily pill or the new shot every 2 months. And after 2 initiation injections, it's been administered, 1 month apart. PrEP saves lives. And to look at where we are in the study and the science of this disease that has killed so many people, has killed so many Black Americans, has killed so many people globally, this is important.
Yeah.
And, you know, something that was an issue early on, there were many reports when PrEP first became, hey, this is approved, right? So many things people were saying, you know, they would go and they would talk to their doctors and their doctors would treat them differently, right? Or not talk to them about PrEP or make them feel like, lower than they are, make them feel low, make them feel small, as if, judging them based on coming in and requesting this drug. And you don't want people to feel like that. You want doctors to be able to talk to them. And obviously there are amazing doctors and scientists, and this is part of the reason that we're seeing these developments, these advancements, but it's important. PrEP saves lives. And so seeing this news, I think it's groundbreaking, because 20, 30 years ago, this wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, think about where we were in the 80s.
Yeah.
And to see this now is groundbreaking. And I'm just sad that we've lost so many people.
It's so unfortunate we have lost a lot of people. When you think about people of color, like you said, from HIV, AIDS to the pandemic, to coronavirus, a lot of lives have been lost. And now you're more likely to live longer, obviously, with HIV than if some people were to catch coronavirus at this stage. So you have to think about that. As time has changed when it comes to that, how do we get past this pandemic? That's the next question.
I am very happy that technology has definitely come a long way, and science rather. But the Black community has a hard time with vaccines and shots. We just naturally, I'm not with that. I'm not really like a flu shot person. We were struggling with wanting to get the COVID-19 vaccine, still struggling, with people wanting to get vaccinated. So I'm going to be very curious to see what the response is once this is finally like readily available for people to be able to get it. I'm going to be, I want to do some, research and kind of like see how the response is, mainly in the Black community, for something like this versus COVID-19 versus flu shot. I mean, all there to save lives, of course, but I'm going to be very, very curious to see what the response is going to be to people that have the opportunity to and need to take this vaccine. So, but definitely happy that science has come a long way.